You may be seated. So good morning again, everyone. Welcome to the National Youth Dialogue, where today we're gathering bright young minds and passionate advocates to discuss how we, the youth, and yes, I said we, the youth, we're all youth here today, yes, can be at the forefront of building resilient and inclusive communities. I am Samantha Wilmot, and I'm thrilled to be one of your hosts for today's pivotal discussion.
And I'm Kevin Lewis, equally as excited to bring you through what promise to be an engaging and insightful forum. So today we're not just here to talk, but we're here to engage and discuss how we can shape the future and explore youth perspectives on how we can better the future for not just Jamaica, but the entire world.
Indeed. So we have an incredible lineup of speakers for you today, lots of discussions and interactive sessions. So let's get started and make sure our voices are heard. And as we build the resilient, inclusive, and prosperous future we want to see.
We are honored to have with us today Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, the Honorable Marsha Smith, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education and Youth, Mr. Dennis Zulu, United Nations Resident Coordinator for Jamaica, Ambassador Angela Comfort, Undersecretary in the Multilateral Affairs Division in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Ambassador Brian Wallace, Permanent Representative of Jamaica to the United Nations in New York, who is joining us online.
Indeed, and additionally, we want to also acknowledge the presence of heads of UN agencies, funds, and programs, as well as youth leaders and all distinguished guests here with us today. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everyone. Our theme for today is Let's Be Future Ready, Youth Perspectives on the Future We Want. So I'll repeat that again. Let's be future ready, youth perspectives on the future we want.
Kevin, I think we should say it together. Come, let's be future ready.
Let's be future ready,
youth perspectives on the... No, man, it doesn't sound convincing. We need it on the screen. See it there on the screen. Let's go again together. Let's be... Awesome. They sound ready now.
Sound better.
Yes.
Okay, so this discussion is a critical part of the lead up to the Summit of the Future, which will be held in September 2024, a global gathering that aims to tackle the most pressing challenges of our time.
Indeed, and to further set the context, the Summit of the Future is a pivotal global event that seeks to address the most pressing challenges of our time by fostering inclusive, forward-thinking strategies for sustainable development and peace. Instruments like the Declaration on Future Generations and the Pact for the Future are crucial in setting the framework for the future for long-term global cooperation, emphasizing the importance of safeguarding the rights and well-being of future generations. Let us further add that it is essential for us as youth to be mindful of and actively engage in these multilateral processes, as the decisions made today will directly impact our future. By participating, young people can ensure that our voices are heard, our rights protected, and that we play a central role in shaping a world that is resilient, inclusive, and just for all.
Okay, so to officially kick off our dialogue, let's begin with the welcome remarks from Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Let's make her welcome.
Thank you, Masters of Ceremony. Let me see. Yep, thank you very much. The Honorable Marsha Smith, Your Excellency Mr. Dennis Zulu, UN Resident Coordinator and heads of UN agencies present here today, heads and representatives. Ambassador Brian Wallace, if you are here with us virtually, I see we have some technical issues, so if not, in absentia. Members of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade team, Excellencies, youth leaders in particular, ladies and gentlemen, young and not so young. Good morning and welcome to this morning's National Youth Dialogue being held in the context of the upcoming UN Summit of the Future. First of all, I want to thank you for the youthification of the theme. So we had the basic youth perspectives on the future we want, which takes from the UN theme on the future we want and puts it in the context of what we need to do, which is listen to our young people. And then you put the action in it, which I love, which is let's be future ready. And I'm so looking forward to hearing the results of the discussions today that are going to be geared at how it is that we in Jamaica are a part of becoming future ready. But in welcoming you, I really want to start by thanking our multilateral affairs team, our team at the Permanent Mission of the United Nations, of Jamaica at the United Nations, and of course the UN multi-country team for working together, and to you young people for coming together at short notice. I know a lot of you are on your summer breaks, so I really do appreciate your making the time to put back on the uniform, to put on the button down, and to be here to discuss the important matters before us. As you would have heard by now, or you would have seen as you started to research this issue, you would know that within the UN system, Jamaica is co-leading the negotiations on the Declaration of Future Generations, together with the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And in this context, the context of these negotiations, that is the part we are playing in preparing for the Summit of the Future. I'm so very pleased that we've been able to create this opportunity to listen to the voices of our young people, voices of the present, and indeed voices of the future, as we move closer to the 79th session of the UN General Assembly, and more particularly to the Summit of the Future, which will immediately precede it. At 1.8 billion strong, the world's young people collectively form an extremely important stakeholder grouping. And while many globally are marginalized, living in circumstances of war and extreme vulnerability, including famine and other extreme circumstances, young people as a global demographic today are also more empowered than they have ever been before. This as a result of your unparalleled access to education and to information, your grasp of technology and your resourcefulness and resilience, unparalleled as we find ourselves today. We are proud that here in Jamaica and indeed across the world, you and your contemporaries are already participating in national development. The United Nations recognizes that young people must play a more active role in helping to create the world in which we all live and to make it better, to overcome complex crises, which seem to arise every day, to achieve peace, security, justice, climate resilience, and sustainable development for all. I think it bears emphasis, in fact, that your participation, your thoughts, your perspectives are needed more than ever on progress and achievement of the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development, in achieving, in short, our SDGs. Jamaica, therefore, commends the UN for developing a youth strategy which prioritizes engagement, participation, and advocacy. The youth strategy within the UN system promotes meaningful and sustainable engagement and partnerships with young people and their organizations, networks, and movements through formal and informal mechanisms. At the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, we are pleased to support this work as we continue to try to strengthen, but to work to strengthen our tradition of promoting engagement at the youth level. And I'm therefore so pleased that many of you are here, not only listening to these things for the first time, but as seasoned partners, seasoned advocates, and seasoned participants in international youth advocacy. So our dialogue this morning, the focus on youth perspectives on the future we want, is a critical mechanism to help guide preparations which are underway for Jamaica's participation in the Summit of the Future. This summit, as you heard earlier, will bring together heads of government and heads of state with a common goal of international peace and security, supported by a strong multilateral system. a system in which we, as a small country, believe fundamentally as part of our foreign policy. Leaders will discuss achieving sustainable development in spite of the many challenges which face our world. And of course, Jamaica will be participating and advocating in particular on the challenges faced by small island developing states and other developing countries in issues including climate change, climate financing, and financing for development. But as a whole, however, in the broader context of our participation, which, as you heard, is actually focused on a particular document, or responsibility for a particular document while working in the broader scheme, it has been an absolute honor for Jamaica to co-facilitate the intergovernmental process for the Declaration on Future Generations. I really want, even if he's not joined us yet, to commend Ambassador Brian Wallace, our permanent representative to the United Nations, for his diligent stewardship of this matter, and indeed to commend our very small but effective team there in the UN, in New York at the UN rather, that has been supporting this undertaking. As we work to meet the difficult challenges of today, it is our duty to also design a future for our young people, for our youth and succeeding generations that is just, sustainable and equitable. So we must solve the problems that have been created in a way that empowers you to become masters of your own destiny. The government of Jamaica is committed to thinking and acting in the interests of present and future generations and embedding intergenerational dialogue in our current decision-making. And this is why we have done things like establishing the National Youth Advisory Council. It's why when we created the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council, we didn't simply add 2 young people to represent the youth voice on it. We created a Global Jamaica Diaspora Youth Council as well to make sure that the youth agenda could be pursued across all areas of interest to young people. And we also, of course, re-energized the Youth Parliament and even held the all-female sitting of the House of Parliament, which I particularly enjoyed, among other initiatives, which are institutional steps at raising and embedding the voice of young people in nation building. So this dialogue today is another mechanism to allow us to reflect at the summit the needs and the perspectives of younger members of this generation, your needs, your aspirations, even as we also ensure that our decision-making today takes account of the needs and interests of future generations, those not yet born. This is where the thinking now is. What should we be thinking about for future generations? The summit will sign off on the Pact for the Future, which also speaks to strengthening meaningful youth participation at national and international levels. And we recognize, of course, that member states of the UN are at different stages in terms of youth engagement. All countries are not yet of a cultural mindset to bring young people together and to listen to them at a governmental level. So Jamaica has a lot to be proud of in this regard. At last year's preparatory meeting at the 78th UN General Assembly, my colleague ministers and I were actually really pleased to hear from the youth advocate, the UN's youth advocate, Ms. Baraidzo Kativu, who spoke really strongly and soundly and inspirationally on behalf of young people. And we heard her loud and clear. Young people have been calling for seats at the table, for equal partnership in policy and decision-making, and for strengthening intergenerational partnership and solidarity. So I think as we engage in this process before us today, and as we continue to strengthen how it is we engage, as there's always more work to be done in these areas, we are fully aware that our collective decisions, actions, and even inaction today have an intergenerational multiplier effect. And that awareness is, of course, an important part of policy making. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade and the UN Resident Coordinator's Office are, if I can speak on your behalf, just on this particular sentence, to say that we are really, really happy to be here to facilitate your views and input towards the implementation of the summit's Pact for the Future and the Declaration on Future Generations. So we encourage you through this dialogue and otherwise to take full advantage of the opportunity to have your voices heard. As you would recognize from the participants today, which are quite ranging, you would see that we recognize that engagement shouldn't only happen nationally, it should happen internationally, and our diaspora is a part of that, as they are also a bridge between our societies. I am confident, in fact, that we are quite clear that all young Jamaicans at home and abroad must be empowered to achieve their full potential and to play their part as agents of change. So as we participate in today's activities, I do hope that we will confront a few critical issues as part of our discourse. I'm hoping that one of the issues we'll discuss is the role of young people in ridding our nation of crime and violence. Young people are both perpetrators and victims of violence to an inordinate extent, and we really have to find solutions to these issues, and the voice of young people, of course, is critical to that. Climate change, indisputably clear and present danger to small island developing states such as ours. We are all impacted. What are your views on our solutions? How do we work together more effectively? We look forward to hearing. So notwithstanding, again, these issues, in spite of all the unavoidable global challenges and suffering at national and international levels, we must recognize and capitalize on moments of hope and moments of opportunity, such as presented by this summit. Opportunities to harness goodwill globally, to leverage it into positive action for the future. So all of us together, young and young at heart, must choose to pursue a path to a brighter future and to be a part of that. Yes, young at heart. Yeah, I think we can claim that space if no other. So I want to emphasize how important it is that we work towards creating a future that is just and equitable. Make no mistake, as wise financial investments mature and pay dividends, wise personal, intellectual, and social investments in Jamaica will create the future that we want to see, and you are core to that. You are not only the beneficiaries, but you're the developers of future sustainable action. So I'm confident in your abilities, in your intellectual strength, and the robustness of your your abilities to discuss issues in the way they need to be, frankly and clearly. And that, I think, will produce fruitful outcomes from today's discussion. So I want to thank you again for being a part of this, for coming together, and for sharing your perspectives, as you will do later today. Thank you once more, and all the very best as we get future ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Johnson-Smith. And now we'll hear from Mr. Dennis Zulu, the United Nations Resident Coordinator for Jamaica. Let's make him welcome.
Good morning, young people. You see, I left no one behind, right? I'm inclusive in my greeting this morning. Good to be here, and good to see a turnout of this nature. So let me first of all recognize the presence of our dear Minister, the Honorable Kamima Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, the Honorable Marsha Smith, State Minister, the Minister of Education and the Youth, Ambassador Brian Wallace, who could be on the line this morning, but I'm sure he will join later on today. Ambassador Angela Comfort, the Undersecretary, Multilateral Affairs Division, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, representatives from PIOJ, other senior government officials from Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other ministries present here this morning, UN colleagues and other representatives of international organizations, members of the media, and of course, our dear youths. On behalf of the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and indeed the United Nations country team here in Jamaica, let me add my extension of a warm welcome to you all for participating in this National Youth Dialogue on the Summit of the Future under the theme, Let's Be Future Ready, Youth Perspectives on the Future We Want. It's always a privilege and honor to share and learn from the young people of Jamaica. The future belongs to you, and your voices are essential in shaping the communities we all want to live, raise families, do business, and retire in right here in Jamaica and around the globe. As a nation with a vibrant and significant youth population, Jamaica's government has prioritized the needs and aspirations of its young people through various forward-thinking initiatives. Like you, the United Nations understands the pivotal role that youth play in shaping a brighter future for all. And this is why we're eager to respond to your call, Minister Johnson-Smith, to collaborate with the government in engaging Jamaica's youth to discuss, advocate, and influence the kind of world that they will inherit. Thank you, Minister, for your wisdom and your vision and leadership. Let's all give the Minister a well-deserved round of applause. Jamaica's strong commitment to multilateralism and its active role within the United Nations is well established and well acknowledged. It comes as no surprise that Jamaica, alongside the Netherlands, have been co-chairing the intergovernmental consultations, which will lead to the global declaration on the future generations. This important declaration is set to be adopted by member states at this year's Summit of the Future, where we'll once again come together to reflect, decide, and take decisive actions to press gas on the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm happy that we'll delve into the declaration today, and if you have not read it, you better do so. Thank you to Jamaica's leadership. This document upholds the rights of future generations to inherit a healthy planet, a peaceful world, and the opportunities to lead fulfilling lives. And this declaration is more than just words, it's a call to action. The world today faces many challenges: climate change, poverty, inequality. This challenge can seem overwhelming, but I want you to know that you are not powerless to make a difference. In fact, you're the generation that will define the future. This is why it is also important for us to hear from you today. I invite your full participation as we prepare ourselves for conversations in the Summit of the Future this September. And this will not just be a one-off conversation, friends. The United Nations and its partners are actively engaged with their youth networks globally, Jamaica being no exception. We hear your voices, and we've connected with you through our partnership forums and conferences across various agencies. We've listened to your messages during the International Youth Day this week and are gathering your insights through the U Report. Our United Nations Youth Focal Points are embedded within many of your networks, associations, and working groups. And we've heard so far that, and you need to affirm to this and tell me whether that's true or not, you want us to bring better work together to promote peace, security, human rights for all, especially our children. Is that true? All right. We want greater involvement in decision-making because your voices and perspectives are essential in shaping the future. Is that so? Right. I need to hear it louder, okay? You want us to increase investments in education, health, social protection, leaving no one behind. Is that correct? Yes. Great. And perhaps more importantly, we've learned that you want to work with us to protect the environment and the natural resources and build a resilient country that can better withstand shocks and natural disasters, Hurricane Bell, for instance. Is that the future you envision? Yes. Good. And we recognize that truly we're borrowing this planet from you, and we have a responsibility to leave it in good condition. True? Yes. Okay. We therefore take this responsibility very seriously, which is why the United Nations in Jamaica adopted a Youth Engagement Action Plan to ensure that Jamaica's young people are not just in the front passenger seat, but you are the drivers moving us towards a resilient and sustainable development. I'm happy to announce that in the next phase of our Youth Engagement Action Plan, the UN in Jamaica will launch its first ever Youth Advisory Group this coming Monday. This is another step in ensuring youth are at the table. Stay tuned to the website and social media for the details on how to apply. Friends, young people, colleagues, we are facing unprecedented challenges. Just this week, as we continue to recover from the devastation of Hurricane Beryl, our nation was shaken by tragic shootings and the loss of several lives, including children and young people in Clarendon. I want to use this forum to join all well-thinking Jamaicans in condemning this heinous attack on civility and morality, and reiterate to you, Honourable Minister, that the United Nations stands with the people of Jamaica in lending our resources and expertise to eliminating the scourge of violence that would seek to invoke fear and terror in our people. Young people, I say to you, stay strong, keep raising your voices, keep sharing your ideas, hold on to your optimism as we work together to create a better future for everyone. The future still belongs to you. It is a future still full of possibilities. But the future you want, as you see, requires your hard work, your dedication, and your passion. I have no doubt that you're up to the challenge, and I have no doubt we are beside you every step of the way. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zulu. Please help me welcome the Honorable Marsha Smith, Minister of State from the Ministry of Education and Youth.
Good morning. Let me first greet our moderators this morning, Ms. Samantha Wilmot and Mr. Kavan Lewis. I'm happy that we're having young persons corral and lead us in these discussions this morning. Your leadership role is important at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. Okay? So thank you so much. Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Mr. Dennis Zulu, the UN Resident Coordinator of Jamaica, and the other members of the UN agencies who are here. Ambassador Brian Wallace, the Permanent Representative of Jamaica to the United Nations. Other members of the Diplomatic Corps present. Representatives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade and the Ministry of Education and Youth. Representatives from the Jamaica Umbrella Youth Groups, the Diaspora Youth, and the UN Association of Jamaica, and all youth present, which includes all of us, ladies and gentlemen, and the media. It is a wonderful morning, and I know that the discussions today will yield much results. As we prepare for the Summit of the Future set for September of this year in New York, it is a great opportunity for us to assess where Jamaica stands in relation to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And it is very fitting that we are having it this week, a week when we would have celebrated International Youth Day on Monday. And in my engagement with the youth on that day, I reminded them of paragraph 53 of the 2030 agenda. And at that paragraph, the agenda sets out very clearly that if we are to address the issues facing all mankind, youth are at the center. Every young person in this room should know that paragraph by heart, because it ultimately underscores that Goal 17, the goal that deals with partnership, requires youth partnership. At the Ministry of Education and Youth, we fully endorse today's dialogue. Through our various policies, initiatives, we are seeking to help Jamaica achieve its sustainable development goals, and in particular, as they impact our children and young people. We certainly expect that as our young people engage in academia, civil society, the UN system, that you will all develop a better appreciation for the linkages between the different stakeholder groups and sharpen your own perspective on how you can influence national, regional, and global policies in relation to the environment, social and economic policies that affect our sustainable goals. And I will be the shortest speaker in this portion of the program, but I'm dealing with young people, and I like to bring something practical to the discussions. So this is my recommendation to you young people as you go through the course of the day. Planning for the future requires an awareness of the present. I'm going to say it again. If we are to plan for the future, we must be aware of the present. And I hope that while we have this discussion, that you will arm yourself with the knowledge of what is taking place in your country. That means that when the discussions are happening later on, I expect persons to make reference to the national budget, to see how it is that the government has mainstreamed youth issues through financing of the various programs that target young persons. A discussion relating to the youth without a discussion relating to how the country is run from a government perspective in terms of financing will be an incomplete discussion. That's my first recommendation. My second recommendation, as you have these discussions, you need to have a full awareness as to the NGO landscape. You hear PPP all the time being said. Issues relating to youth are issues that everyone has a concern about. And the thrust and the initiatives do not only come from the government, they come from non-governmental organizations. So you must have an awareness as to what is the register of NGOs that the Office of the Companies Office has. What does the Department of Cooperatives and Friendly Societies have to say as to the register of the various societies and groups that have at their mandate youth-related initiatives? So that's my bit of advice for you, that discuss it all, but put it against the awareness of what is actually happening in the environment. Thank you.
So thank you to the Minister of State from the Ministry of Education and Youth. All right, so we have heard a lot this morning so far. Minister Johnson Smith called us to action as seasoned, I just loved how she said that. I felt so much a part of that, seasoned partners and advocate. You hear that? Seasoned, so we're not just coming on. We're seasoned, right, towards youth development. Mr. Zulu also led us in confirming the future we want and reminded us of the partnership required for us to be future ready. Our Minister of State gave us two main recommendations, right, Minister of State, right? So the first one was planning for the future requires an awareness of the... Were you listening? Right? Let's go again. So planning for the future requires an awareness of the... Awesome. And the second one was that you're supposed to what? Right? And have full awareness as to the NGO landscape. So we just want to thank them all. And I'm sure that we all feel welcome from that. Thank you so much. All right, so now we move on with the program, and we will go to the launch of the U report, Consultation, read the Declaration on the Future Generation. Now, this session will be led by Olga Isaza, UNICEF Jamaica representative, and Rihanna Robinson, UNICEF Youth Council member, who will share how they have used the consultative process with children and youth to inform policies and programs in Jamaica, and how this same process will be used to enrich Jamaica's position for the Summit of the Future. They will also launch the youth consultation process through the U report. Please welcome them.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me, first of all, present my recognition to the youth population present in the room today. And of course, let me acknowledge the presence of the Senator, the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, dear Mr. Dennis Zulu, our United Nations representative resident coordinator, the Honorable Marcia Smith, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education and Youth, the Honorable Ambassador Brian Wallens, Permanent Representative of Jamaica to the UN, distinguished guests, and of course, teams from the various organizations present. What kind of future do our children, adolescents, and young people want? How do we build that future today? Who needs to come together to make it happen? Those are the fundamental questions we want to address today. 35 years ago, as humanity, We recognize that children have the right to express their opinion and that we have the obligation to take their opinion into account in all aspects that affect them. By signing the Convention of the Right of the Child, Jamaica committed to honoring that promises. And that's why we are here today. The draft declaration on future generations that concern us today keeps that promises alive. It recognizes that children and young people are agents of change and that intergenerational dialogue and engagement, including with children, young people, and all persons, is needed and should be taken into account in policy and decision-making processes to safeguard the needs and interests of future generations. Creating participatory and deliberative society where opinions can be expressed, consent, and dissent in a framework of respect and appreciation for differences is what maintains and nurtures democracy. However, generating conditions for genuine participation is not always easy. That's why, from the United Nations, we are supporting the government's initiative to conduct this consultation with adolescents and young people in Jamaica through today's Person Dialogue and through YouReport. YouReport is a UN-led digital platform designed to empower young people by giving them a voice on issues that affect them. Operating in more than 90 countries, YouReport engaged more than 14 million young individuals known as YouReporters, who participate in polls and discussion on different topics that affect their lives. In Jamaica, we have 14,000 YouReporters. This platform uses SMS and mobile technology to ensure that people with and without internet access can be heard in real time. The YouReport poll we are launching today will provide the government and different organizations with immediate insight into the concerns and needs of youth. It will help ensure that international and national policies for children, adolescents, and youth are more aligned with their realities. It will also help raise awareness about critical social issues, promote and inform public dialogue among peers and stakeholders, and inform the international dialogue during the Summit of the Future. But one of the characteristics of YouReport that I want to highlight today is that this platform is not only for adolescents and young people, but is designed and led by them. Let me hand over to Rihanna to share more about the experience being part of YouReport, as well as some of the tangible results we have seen when we stop and listen to their voices. You will also hear how you can participate and help others to participate in the YouReport poll we are launching today. Rihanna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Olga. As a member of the YouReport Youth Council, we're not only YouReporters who engage with the platform, but we play a part in a greater team of youth advocates who support UNICEF by providing a youth perspective on rights-based issues which impact children and youth, as well as assisting with the management of the platform. The YouReport platform, as Olga rightfully mentioned, is not only for youth, but it is co-designed and led by youth, where we garner the youth opinion on issues we are faced with and use that information to drive change, to inform policy, and to generate meaningful solutions at the national, regional, and international level. These perspectives and opinions have been used to implement several services and policies requested by young people in response to the issues highlighted. These services include the You Matter chat line, which is our text-based 24-hour anonymous mental health chat line, which was born out of a 2018 mental health poll, which highlighted how stigma and other issues surrounding mental health have impacted youth, highlighting the need for support, as 53% of youth indicated that they have considered suicide. Secondly, the Fundu platform, which is a chatbot which provides youth with 21st century skills to assist with job procurement and individual growth and development. This platform was
informed and co-designed by a U-Report poll, which showed that 53% of young people had never received any useful training in life skills associated with employment, like resume writing and how to conduct themselves in an interview. U-Report polls have also been used to shape national policies, ensuring that the critical perspective of youth is included at even the highest levels, such as our national school nutrition policy, where a resounding 95% of responses were in favor of the government prioritizing proper nutrition in schools through regulation, as well as the constitutional reform poll, where 71% of youth respondents were in favor of Jamaica becoming a republic, which was used to inform the reports coming out of the Constitutional Reform Committee. Whilst it is that we have come a far way with youth participation in Jamaica, it is clear that we still have ways to go. Services like U-Report receive different kinds of input from youth regarding a vast cross-section of issues, and we work aside youth to bolster our participation rights whilst meeting our needs towards a better future. I will now hand over back to Olga.
No, just to say that Jamaica has great examples on how children and youth participation has led to tangible actions for children and youth, as we have heard. So now we have a new U-Report poll, which is being launched today. As I said at the beginning, its purpose is to collect your perspective about what kind of future do you want, how do we build that future since today, who needs to come together to make it happen. So please share your perspective and help us disseminate the poll so that others can be heard. As you all know, your voice for us really matters. So, and it can make really the difference in shaping the future that you deserve. So now we are going to see how it looks like.
Yes, so thank you, Olga. So we'd like every person in this room and those joining online, every young person between the ages of 13 to 29, to participate in taking this poll. And the good news is that we have prizes. So, you know, we need to complete that poll. So to participate, as you'll see on the screens, you will need to send the word future to the U-Report number, which is 876-838-4897. And I'll read that again just for ease of access. 876-838-4897. And this is via SMS or WhatsApp, or you could DM the word future via Facebook Messenger or Instagram direct message at U-Report Jamaica. If you have not registered for U-Report, meaning that you're not a U-Reporter, which I hope that's not the case, but if you have not yet registered, you will be prompted to do so at first. So you know what that means. The persons who are already registered, they're already 1 foot ahead of you in getting the prize because they'll already be doing the poll when you're registering. All right, so bear that in mind as well. So the first 2 persons to complete the poll in the room, you will win the prizes, and those online, just indicate in the chat when you are finished, and you can screenshot the final thank you message at the end of the poll as proof that you've completed it. And you can indicate that, and we will connect with you. For those in the room, when it is that you've completed the poll, you can find anyone wearing a blue or white UNICEF shirt, and we will present you with your prizes. And just to reiterate, I'd just like you to share the poll and encourage your fellow young people, fellow youth, your friends, your peers, your schoolmates to take this poll. You can share it on your own platforms, and you can share our page at U-Report Jamaica and at UNICEF Jamaica. And that's on Instagram, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter. You can repost the poll. So thank you for being such an amazing audience today and listening. And I really hope to see several responses to our poll, even within the first 2 or a couple hours of launching. Thank you.
More than 14,000.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you. All right, so big thank you to Olga and Rihanna for that wonderful presentation. They just shared with us how through the U Report consultation, they have used the consultative process with children and youth to inform programs in Jamaica, programs and policies in Jamaica, and we just want to say a big thank you to them. I also just want to re-emphasize, so to participate in the poll, so they launched a new poll today that is geared towards, what is the kind of future that we want. And so to participate in the poll, you will need to send the word future, say future, yes, that word, to the U Report number at 876-838-4897 via SMS or WhatsApp. All right, so the word is what? Awesome, thank you.
Okay, so up next we have Ambassador Brian Wallace, who will be joining us online and has been with us since morning. But before he speaks, I'd like to recognize Asher Richards, who is the co-chair of the Diaspora Youth Council. He will provide an overview of the Summit of the Future and one of the key output documents, which is the Declaration on Future Generations. This declaration is central to today's discussion as it guides how we as a global community can safeguard the interests of future generations. Ambassador Wallace, over to you.
Let's welcome him.
Well, thank you so much. Masters of Ceremony, for the excellent job that you've been doing so far. I've been following the proceedings here from New York, and I would ask you to forgive me if you hear intermittently some noise in the background, the noise of New York City behind me. Honorable Minister Johnson Smith, thank you as well for the introduction and for the kind words on our work on the declaration. Honorable Minister Marsha Smith, represents the Resident Coordinator Dennis Zulu for your tireless efforts as well. Ambassador Comfort, Excellencies, it's an honor for me to be here with you to share in this opportunity. It always energizes the work that we do when we have the opportunity to collaborate with our young people. You are indeed the energy of a nation and, quite frankly, the energy of this planet. I wanted to take some time to just frame how we got to where we are leading into the Summit of the Future and its outcome documents, a little bit of the background, a little bit of the history, so that we have a full understanding of what it is that we are charged to do. So in a political declaration commemorating the 75th anniversary of the United Nations in 2021, member states committed to a set of 12 overarching priorities to promote sustainability for the planet, its protection and preservation for future generations, with a request to the Secretary General to provide recommendations to address current and future global challenges. The priorities include leaving no one behind, protecting our planet, promoting peace and preventing conflict, abiding by international law, placing women and girls at the center, building trust, improving digital cooperation, upgrading the UN, ensuring sustainable financing, boosting partnerships, listening to and involving youth, and being prepared for global shocks. So the Secretary General presented the Our Common Agenda, or OCA, report, which was aimed at turbocharging the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals in response to the request emanating from the UN 75 Declaration. The OCA report called for a Summit of the Future to forge a new global consensus to tackle current challenges and prepare for opportunities for the future. The Summit of the Future is therefore viewed as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to enhance cooperation on challenges and address gaps in global governance, to reaffirm existing commitments and advance a multilateral system that is better positioned to impact the lives of all people. The 12 commitments in the 75 Declaration constitute the scope for the Summit of the Future. And just as background, the Secretary General also published several policy briefs to present to member states some guidance, some scientific and evidence-based analysis on the proposals contained in the OCA. So on to the Pact for the Future and its annexes. As Minister Johnson Smith mentioned, the summit will be held in September under the theme Summit of the Future, Multilateral Solutions for a Better Tomorrow. And heads of state and government will adopt, hopefully, a concise, action-oriented outcome document entitled A Pact for the Future. The scope of issues in the Pact are covered in 5 chapters. First, on sustainable development and financing for development. Second chapter is on international peace and security. The third chapter is on science, technology, innovation, and digital cooperation. The fourth chapter is on youth and future generations. And finally, a 5th chapter on transforming global governance. There will be 2 annexes to the Pact for the Future, the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration on Future Generations. All 3 documents will be intergovernmentally negotiated in separate and discrete processes. The Pact is expected to be agreed in advance by consensus through an intergovernmental negotiation process led by the permanent representatives of Germany and Namibia. The permanent representatives of Sweden and Rwanda, who was later replaced by the permanent representative of Zambia, were appointed to co-facilitate the negotiations on the Global Digital Compact. This GDC is the first of its kind and is intended to take stock of developments in digital technology over the past 2 decades, including artificial intelligence, and to reflect agreement on the vision of digital technology as an enabler of development while promoting the responsible use of technology. In the case of the Declaration on Future Generations, the permanent representatives of Fiji and the Kingdom of the Netherlands were initially appointed as co-facilitators for this process, with a view to focusing on the impact of decisions today and how long-term commitments by member states can contribute to the legacy for future generations. As permanent representative of Jamaica, I was appointed as co-facilitator in February of last year when the ambassador of Fiji demitted office. Following my appointment, we led a series of informal dialogues and briefings and consultations to sensitize member states about the importance of thinking and acting in the interests of future generations and the residual impact and consequences of long-term decision-making. This culminated these consultations, which involved a wide cross-section of member states, civil society, NGOs, youth, children, UN agencies, academia, and the private sector. This process culminated in the crafting of an issues paper in July of 2023, which set out some guiding principles, the key morals and values that we figured needed to be entrenched in governance, and which now form the foundation on which the Declaration on Future Generations has been developed. The declaration now comprises 4 segments: a preamble, guiding principles, commitments, and actions. The first 3 segments are aligned with the 4 pillars of the United Nations: peace and security, human rights, development, and the rule of law. The preamble outlines collective responsibility, affirming commitments to previous agreements and emphasizing the intergenerational impact of present actions. It highlights the need for intergenerational dialogue, investment in sustainable peace and prosperity, and acknowledges the complex challenges faced by current generations. Furthermore, it underscores the importance of a resilient multilateral system and defines future generations as those not yet born, but who will inherit the planet, stressing the necessity of considering their interests in decision-making processes. The guiding principles emphasize the overarching elements which are imperative for present generations to act in a manner that safeguards the interests of future generations. These principles include promoting international peace and security, upholding fundamental human rights for all without discrimination of any form, and ensuring the rights of future generations to thrive in sustainable development by addressing poverty, hunger, and inequality. Additionally, creating and maintaining a sustainable environment is prioritized, as well as the importance of an inclusive multilateral system for enhancing cooperation and creating a more equal, resilient, and sustainable world. Anchored by the guiding principles, the commitments pledge to promote peaceful and inclusive societies while addressing inequalities, empowering women, and eliminating discrimination. Cultural diversity is honored, and sustainable development strategies are emphasized to meet present needs without compromising the future. Action on environmental challenges is also prioritized alongside cooperation on education, healthcare, and demographic realities to secure the interests of both present and future generations. The actions segment, most notably, speaks to the tools required to ensure the implementation, the institutionalization, and the monitoring of the commitments, including through leveraging science, data, and strategic foresight for long-term evidence-based planning and developing sustainable practices. This also includes ensuring access to knowledge, investing in capacity building to address future global shocks, as well as adopting cross-sectoral approaches in policy development. Also included is the formation of partnerships with relevant stakeholders to share best practices and innovative ideas, and equipping the multilateral system to support long-term and intergenerational thinking, while at the same time fostering a future-oriented United Nations system to promote science-based sustainable decision-making. Finally, recognizing the important advisory and advocacy role of the United Nations with respect to future generations, the Secretary General's proposal to appoint a special envoy for future generations to support the implementation of the declaration is taken account of in the draft text. The declaration also reflects the member states' proposal to convene a high-level meeting in the 83rd session of the UN General Assembly, that is 2028 to 2029, to provide updates on the actions undertaken to safeguard the needs and interests of future generations. The proposal was also made for the United Nations Secretary General to report on the implementation of the declaration. So what are the next steps? This is what I have just outlined is the text that is currently before member states for consideration. Each of the outcomes for the Summit of the Future is at a critical stage of the intergovernmental negotiations as we work to finalizing the documents by the end of August. Following the round of discussions held over the past 2 weeks on the Pact for the Future, the co-facilitators will issue a third version of that text, hopefully within the next week or so, and that will then be subject to further negotiations. On the Global Digital Compact, there has been no consensus to date among member states on the Rev 3, that's the third revised version. And so negotiations on that will continue on Monday, 19th of August coming. Hopefully, they will be able to arrive at some compromise positions then. As it relates to our process, the Declaration on Future Generations, the intergovernmental negotiations ended on the 19th of July. The revised version of the text was placed on the silence procedure on Tuesday of this week, and that silence procedure ends at 4 p.m. New York time today. So myself and my team here and the team from the Kingdom of the Netherlands are waiting with bated breath to see what member states think of our document that we have placed under silence. We expect that there will be some challenges in arriving at consensus, and these challenges are going to reflect the long-standing positions of member states within the UN context. And these challenges are consistent across the three negotiation processes. Some of these challenges, which constitute the greatest divergence, include human rights, gender equality, and issues related to development, migration, and the environment. Notwithstanding, we are hopeful that the United Nations will come together at this pivotal moment in multilateralism. Now, what are the youth contributions in effect and potentially to the Summit of the Future outcomes? In light of the ongoing intergovernmental negotiations, the substance of the three outcome documents is largely determined by member states' inputs. At this stage, we are encouraging stakeholders, including youth, to transition their efforts towards the successful implementation of the various commitments and calls to action. As the next generation of decision makers, it is increasingly important for youth to begin to identify the areas in which their knowledge and skills could add value to the work that will need to be undertaken by the respective governments today. On Monday, the UN recognized International Youth Day. In so doing, we acknowledge our youth today as digital natives and playing an essential role in digital innovation, creating solutions for addressing global issues, and fostering collaboration to achieve sustainable development. Jamaican youth, equally as innovative as you are resilient, falls squarely within this category. Now, the government of Jamaica is already taking steps in the right direction to safeguard the needs and interests of future generations. However, the Declaration on Future Generation calls for member states to institutionalize this way of thinking in decision-making at all levels of government, across all sectors, while undertaking a whole-of-society approach, an entirely new concept for some, and certainly for the UN as an organization. We will need the assistance of Jamaican youth in developing ideas and tools, as well as in using strategic foresight that would support the establishment of a national framework for long-term decision-making based on science and data by which we may hold ourselves accountable. Framework that transcends budgetary and governance cycles to ensure that we leave behind a society worthy of future generations. Your contribution to our shared future is critical, and it begins today. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give Ambassador Wallace another round of applause. Amazing work. Thank you so much, Ambassador Wallace. All right, so we're about to open the floor for questions and answers. But before I do that, ladies and gentlemen, later in the program, we will have the Honorable Orlando Terlong, Minister of State in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. We'll hear from him later on in the program. So I'd just like us to also make him welcome, please. Welcome, Minister. Right, okay. Right. I thought he was going to come up. You want to come up and say hi, Minister? No? Okay. All right. So now we'll open the floor for a question and answer session with Ambassador Wallace. Now, I also want to encourage our participants online, please feel free to pose your questions, and we'll definitely ensure that they're included in the question and answer segment. So this is an opportunity for you to ask Ambassador Wallace any questions you may have. So since I have the floor, I'll start, Ambassador, if that's okay with you. All right, so Ambassador Wallace, how easy or difficult was it to have member states come to consensus within this process? Because not everything is easy, but not everything is difficult either. Please share with us.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that question. The very short answer is that nothing in multilateralism today is easy. We operate in a very challenging international environment where discussions that you would think would result in very obvious outcomes because we have a shared humanity are often placed in a context of geopolitical positioning. And so nothing is easy. And it has been a difficult process. It continues to be a difficult process. We have begun to receive feedback on our process leading into the close of the silence procedure at 4 o'clock today. And we fully anticipate that we will still have some work left to do to achieve consensus. The intergovernmental negotiations in the room have been challenging, and we have had to try to strike a balance between the interests of 193 member states to reflect consensus in one document that must serve us well into the future. I have to say that because this is such a future-oriented document, it has been somewhat easier for us to channel energies towards consensus because we are casting such a long-term view. It's hard to disagree that future generations, our great-great-grandchildren, need to have a planet that is free of the challenges that we face now of climate change, that is peaceful, that is prosperous, that provides opportunities for all. So it has been challenging, but it has been an interesting exercise in pulling out all of the skills of diplomacy at our disposal. And we are hopeful that we will have a robust and action-oriented and an ambitious, but yet concise declaration that our heads of government and heads of state will adopt in September.
I think Minister Johnson has a question.
I think I would like to pledge a prize, another prize from the UN for anyone who can answer, who is not a member of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade or a UN agency. What is a silence procedure? Do you know what a silence procedure is?
So essentially a silence procedure is that window. Oh, so I'm Tavoy Barrett. I'm from the Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network. Silence procedure is that window in which the member states would have time to review, in this case, the declaration on future generations. So they'd have some time to review the declaration and then raise any objections that they have before, objections or questions before casting their vote. Okay, so that much I'm not sure.
No, about debates. Oh. What's it? Excuse me?
I'm being told I don't get a prize if I answer. But it's just somebody has the other half. Perfect. Go ahead, please.
So the question was to why it's called a silence procedure, correct?
Yeah, how does it operate? Yeah.
Apologies. My name's Kevin Pinnock. It's called a silence procedure because it's aimed to avoid debates, essentially. That's the idea, correct?
And
it promotes the conversation in a more written fashion. I just avoid the debates.
Reel it back in.
You're not going to hear the conversations.
It's essentially, if nobody raises an issue, then it's taken that you have agreement. But if you break the silence, then it reopens the document in its entirety. So it's a silence procedure is when something is put out to a body or a group or the entire organization to say that this is our document. This is where we are. Remember, you're dealing with 193 countries, right? This is our document. Are we agreed? If nobody says anything, then yes, we are. And if one person says something, then it's game on for anybody to raise anything again. Okay. So it's silence procedure because it operates through consensus by silence. But thank you for giving. I think he should still get a prize. But yes. Very well done.
I do have a question for Wallace. Okay, thank you, Minister. So I do have a question for Wallace. Okay, Ambassador Wallace. My question is that with 193 countries involved and based on the quantity of youth, 1.x amount billion, there's a lot of perspectives from the youth themselves in that regard. So what are the odds of this silence procedure going off without a hitch? Yeah. Ambassador? Audio.
I'm not allowed to unmute myself at this stage, so the technical folks have to unmute me. The odds, 0. It's very likely that we will have silence broken because there is such a divergence of views on many issues. The question of human rights, there is always a view from one side of the room that there is not enough. There's a view from the other side of the room that some negotiated documents are tilted too far on human rights and not enough on development. There are some who have very specific interests that they want to see reflected in the declaration. Whether or not that upsets the balance of the text, that's something that as co-facilitators we have to take into account. So sometimes our benchmark is how can we make everybody equally unhappy? Not so much how we satisfy everyone. And that is what we are working towards. We expect to have some discussions over the next few days to try and bridge disquiet, folks who have their concerns. And there will be some as well who will simply want to push a little bit harder to see if they can get something more ambitious on an issue that is of particular importance to them. We have, as co-facilitators, our role is to make sure that we maintain a balance in the text. I'm sure you are aware that there is a north-south divide, but there are also special interests or special areas of interest that particular member states and groups of member states may have that they will want to push. So this is not easy work, but it is how multilateralism operates. And it is a good example of how working towards consensus means standing up for your principles, but being willing to compromise. And that is what we expect at the end of the day, all 193 member states to do, so that we have a document that is worthy of future generations.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador Wallace. We'll take one more question from the audience.
Okay.
Please stand.
Please stand. Ambassador Wallace, on the topic of this conference, Summit of the Future, what are some opportunities available out there for the youth, or especially the disadvantaged youth, to transform their lives?
That's an amazing question. Multilateralism, as was said earlier, has opened up tremendously in the last several years with an emphasis on youth participation. There's a UN Youth Office, there's a UN envoy, the Secretary General's envoy on youth, and there's an Assistant Secretary General who has been appointed to run the Youth Office. So there are opportunities and pathways for engagement with the youth through the institution of the UN itself. For our process, we made sure to engage with youth broadly during our discussions with civil society. Now, bearing in mind that this is primarily a member state and intergovernmental negotiation process, we did seek to consult broadly with all of civil society, including, as I said earlier, youth, academia, private sector, NGOs, CSOs, etc. And I have to tell you that the most engaged and the most constructive among all of the groups that we have engaged with were the youth. And that continues to be true as we live and breathe today. So congratulations to you for the engagement. There are opportunities for further engagement. You have to stay attuned to the process. There is a lot of information available on the UN website. If there are opportunities that you think through your own local NGOs or groupings, you can work through the country team to seek opportunities to reach, or you can reach out to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to see whether there is scope for us to help you to bridge gaps, to open doors, etc. So be optimistic about the pathways for engagement among youth, to be critical agents of change and to be critical participants in decision-making going forward.
Okay. One more question from the audience. Last one.
Ambassador, what role do you see Jamaica playing on the global stage in advocating for the adoption and implementation of the Declaration of Future Generations, particularly in addressing climate change and ensuring intergenerational equity?
Well, this is the role that we have been playing since my appointment as co-facilitator. I have to say, at the time I was appointed to lead this process, along with the ambassador of the Netherlands, this process was in murky waters. The role that Jamaica has played in bringing interest and in bringing cohesiveness and ambition and buy-in to this process is something that Jamaica should be proud of. We have leveraged our political capital, the value that other member states see in Jamaica's leadership on this process, to help to bring compromise into the room, to bring ambition into the room, and to bring energy into the room. And so if we're able to agree this intergovernmentally and adopt it at the Summit of the Future, there will be a legacy for Jamaica's role in crafting this declaration and in leading this process for decades and hopefully hundreds of years to come. So our role has been essential, and it's something, as I say, that Jamaica can be justly proud of.
Okay. All right, so I've had the pleasure of, meeting Ambassador Wallace twice in New York, and I recall him telling us his journey coming out of a rural community and now representing us on the global stage. So as you give your closing remarks, Ambassador, my question to you is, what are your call to action for the young people here today, including myself, as to how we can advance Jamaica and leverage the partnership with international organizations as well as contribute to the long-term development, and also using the principles from the declaration to create tangible and actionable steps?
What a fantastic question. And this is what we're doing here today is an integral part of the answer to that question. Stay engaged. The Declaration on Future Generations is 5 pages. It is not a very long document that is filled with all kinds of UN language that is hard to understand. It's very straightforward. It's structured in a way that gives very clear guidance on what we need to do as a globe. So stay engaged. The implementation of this declaration is going to come through governments, through multilateral institutions, and the pathways that we discussed earlier for youth to play their role in the international institutions is there. Pay attention to it. Follow the websites, follow the discussions, look for opportunities to join on calls like these. Follow what we are doing at the Permanent Mission and at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Undoubtedly, the government itself as a whole is going to have to take a look at the entire Pact for the Future documentation once it's agreed in September to see how to go ahead with implementation. And the Declaration on Future Generations is going to be no small part of that. So there will be pathways for engagement going forward, especially after adoption in September.
Thank you, Ambassador.
All right, so Ambassador Wallace, I don't know if your response was your closing remarks, or do you have a few sentences that you would like to share with us to close out?
Well, just to say thank you so much and for continuing to provide the hope, the energy, that impetus that keeps us rolling along even when we meet challenges, knowing that you are behind us, knowing the energy that you have, the boundless optimism that comes from the young. We will work hard. We will leave no stone unturned to ensure that your future is secure, that the actions that we take today do not compromise the foundations on which you can build a life of prosperity, of peace, and of sustainability for you and for future generations. So thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this process.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Wallace. Thank you so much. You have been so insightful, and we truly appreciate the information that you have shared, and want to thank you for not only taking the time out to, engage us today, but we also want to thank you for your leadership on behalf of Jamaica in this multilateral process. Thank you so much. So we heard him say we must have the hope and the energy. Ladies and gentlemen, is the hope and energy in this room? No, man, it don't sound so. Is the hope and energy in this room? All right, so I love how we're sounding so energized. I just want to encourage you that if you're sharing thoughts on our engagement today, please remember to use the hashtag either on Instagram or X, formerly known as Twitter. The hashtag is FutureReadyJA. All right, so if you're writing, especially about what Ambassador Wallace just said and so forth, if you're taking pictures and that kind of thing, be sure to, get us in on it using the hashtag FutureReadyJA. Okay, so it's now time for a giveaway. So I have a question, all right? And the first person, you're going to have to help me to identify who the first person is. Okay, so the first person who raises their hand with the correct answer, and you're not going to shout it out, you're going to wait to be acknowledged, all right? So here's the question. Along with Jamaica, which other country served as co-facilitator leading intergovernmental process for the Declaration on Future Generations? I wonder if I should make you do it, because you win something already. Yeah? Is there another hand? Did you win something already? No, you just participated, don't you? You be okay with giving her a try? Yes? Oh, that's so sweet of you. All right, so tell us your name and you can share the answer.
Okay, my name is Sarai Matandara Clark. I think the answer is the Netherlands.
Yes, you are correct. Clap her. Yes, man, she was listening.
Congratulations. Okay, so before we move into the next segment, I'd like to take the time to big up our youth organizations that are here with us today. So I know over to my right, we have Jamaica Prefects Association. Give them a round of applause. We have NSSU, which is the National Secondary Students Council. Over to my left, I see Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network. And my dear friend down there from Hillel Academy. I don't know if I'm missing any other youth organization. I know that the Jamaica Diaspora Youth Council is here with us online. And I think we have the Caribbean Regional Youth Council as well, our representative. So just big them up. One last round of applause. Okay, so I hope everyone is all energized and ready for our next discussion, because we're about to dive into a critical conversation that's central to our theme today: fostering peace, inclusion, youth-centered approaches for building resilient communities. I repeat, fostering peace and inclusion, youth-centered approaches for building resilient communities. In this panel, we'll explore how we as young people can lead the charge in creating communities that are both resilient and inclusive.
All right, so I'll be facilitating this discussion where we'll hear from brilliant minds who are actively working in this space, bringing both local and international perspectives. They're poised to share unique perspectives and experiences when we speak of youth rights, social resilience, and community inclusion. So, without further ado, I will introduce our panelists. So, help me to welcome Shanique Bowden. She is the Executive Director of Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network. Oh, we're almost, yeah, love that. Welcome, Shanique. She got the memo. She did indeed. All right, so also help me to welcome Jamaro Marville. He's the Program Analyst at UNDP. So we also welcome Asha Richards, co-chair of the Diaspora Youth Council, and she will be joining us online via Zoom. Welcome her. Yes. And we will also be joined by O'Dane Brooks. He is our CARICOM Youth Ambassador. So our discussion is, you may be seated. So our discussion will center on the Declaration on Future Generation and will be deeply rooted in the guiding principles of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, CRC, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR. We aim to explore innovative and effective strategies for empowering youth as agents of peace and inclusion, ensuring their voices are heard and their rights are protected in the development of resilient communities. Say resilient communities. Say it stronger than that, man. Yes, awesome. So while the CRC and UDHR may not explicitly focus on sustainable cities or communities, many of their articles and principles can be interpreted to support the creation of sustainable youth-friendly environments. These principles include the right to the highest attainable standard of health that supports physical, mental, spiritual, moral, and social development, the right to rest and leisure, to engage in age-appropriate play and recreational activities, the right to express views freely, and the need to address inequality by ensuring equal access to resources, opportunities, and a safe environment. With this foundation, let's embark on a rich dialogue, ladies and gentlemen, guided by thought-provoking questions to uncover actionable insights and foster collaborative spirit towards building a better future for all. Are we ready? Are we ready? Yeah? We want to hear what I'm going to say? Yeah? All right. So, you're going to give me a seat? Love that. Thank you. Okay, so I can see Asha. Welcome, Asha.
Hi,
I can see your face. It's nice to put a face to the name. All right, so we're going to begin with Shanique. We're going to kick things off with you. And the first question I want to pose is, what do you see as the most significant barriers to achieving inclusive and resilient communities? And how do you think youth can help overcome them?
Or is it afternoon? Good morning, still good morning. So, Shanique Bowden from Jamaica Advocacy Network, and necessary to mention that again because I'm prefacing all my comments from the very much youth perspective of the persons within our advocacy council and our larger network. So they very much help to inform my responses today. Many barriers, but if we were supposed to zero in on some significant ones, of course, there is crime and violence as a significant impact to young people being able to actualize their full potential. We see daily, weekly, monthly that many young lives are cut short by the violence that is plaguing our nation. We also have economic inequality perpetuated by poverty and underemployment especially. I've been hearing that, unemployment is down, but of course there's still significant underemployment and largely limited access to opportunities for strong earning potential for young people. We also have environmental vulnerabilities, as we're seeing from the impacts of burial. Many of our southwestern parishes are still significantly impacted, and even some of the questions that we've been having within our context is how do we the school year starting for some of the schools that are still needing to be rebuilt, and those sort of issues. And then very quickly, last two, limited civic engagement. Young people are very apathetic towards what's happening within our society. Many do not know or understand what it is that our government do, and even if they don't see them doing it respectfully. And so they are also not very interested in the civic nature of the work that Jamaica is undertaking. And of course, quite bigly, there is inclusivity, which impacts several young people in very different ways, but calling out especially young people living with HIV, young people with disabilities, and LGBTQ youth who often cannot operate in the same spaces that young people who do not have these vulnerabilities and identities can, and may find themselves facing significant stigma, discrimination, especially when it comes to accessing information and services. Oh,
so
very
just,
quickly.
Just a follow-up question. Okay.
The opportunities.
Right,
so, yes.
right.
So we do see just generally many ways that young people themselves are, entering these different pockets of space through the different networks that we see being established. Especially on the issue of climate change, we do see quite a number of youth groups who are leading climate change initiatives as simple as beach cleanups to speaking to policymakers about the changes that they want to see. We see young people optimizing and utilizing digital media to engage their policymakers and call for the changes that they want. And then we have organizations like JAN that do a lot of capacity building and strengthening of young people so that they can advocate in the spaces that they occupy. Just Monday, we concluded a capacity building session on HIV and SRHR, where we spoke to young persons in St. James about how HIV is impacting young persons and how they themselves in their network can advocate for greater HIV awareness and action.
All right, thank you so much, Shanique. So Jamaro, next question to you. Can you share successful examples of UN programs that have fostered social resilience and inclusion among youth?
Thank you so much for that question. And before I start, I had to take the time just to big up our resident coordinator and by extension the RCO for putting on such a fabulous event. I know that we had some restrictions in terms of timeline, but I do want to give a big congratulations for them. And this in itself is an example of successful youth programming within the UN agencies. But ultimately, before I get into the programming, just to highlight when we're thinking about social resilience and inclusion, just seeing, well, within UNDP, I'm responsible for the social resilience and inclusion portfolio, and our focus is really and truly how can we improve the livelihoods of marginalized communities. As Shanique would have mentioned, within those groupings, we have youth, we have women, we have persons within the LGBTI community, and we have been shifting focus particularly on our youth just to ensure that for future generations, they are able to enjoy this space that we are occupying right now. I really want to start off as it relates to programming. As we know in Jamaica, a major issue being our impact on our youth would be citizen safety and security. And one of our successful programs out of actually UNESCO, I do know that we have our colleague Paula in the back, through our joint program Salient, which aims at reducing small arms and light weapons. They had a program, Youth for Peace, where they went into vulnerable communities, working with educators, working with youth, to see how and in what ways conflict management as it relates to educators, how can they handle the situations which arise within our schools, unfortunately, and then just doing some life skills with our youth to build their capacity. Fortunately, we do have some further funding so that we can expand this program, and we're really looking to see how and in what ways we can reach other communities here in Jamaica. Also, I maybe would have heard about the U report from UNICEF, a very key component with that Fondue chatbot, as would have been highlighted by Olga. One of the major issues that we have is access to professional capacity building tools, and I really believe that that was a very critical and needed program within the Jamaican context. And then also, I can't leave without talking about a UNDP program is actually upcoming. Ready, Set, Great is a youth program which we speak to tackling multidimensional poverty here in Jamaica. Last year, we had a very interesting conversation, and we had some call to actions being highlighted where youth are actually the ones driving the discussion. So we plan to follow up with that discussion this year, seeing how can we get before persons such as Senator Johnson Smith to see how the government, by extension youth, can really come together to make a change. And then I can't close by bigging up also our Ministry of Education and Youth. They are a very key partner. I know that we have Minister Marsha Smith here, but we also have Ms. Yannick Williams in the back as well, who has been a major champion for UN agencies in terms of ensuring that our programming is executed. We have the right persons at the table. So without this collaboration amongst the various stakeholders here, that's just how we're able to achieve such.
Thank you so much, Jamara. And, whilst I was listening to you, a question that I was going to pose was, are some of these programs youth-led? But then I heard you mention Ready, Set, Great, and I sit on that committee, and I've seen the young persons at the table, and they're the ones who actually plan the event. So, we just want to congratulate the UN on those programs. Thank you so much. All right, so we'll go to the lady online, Asha Richards. So, Asha, your question, in your capacity as co-chair of the Diaspora Youth Council, what role does the youth diaspora play in promoting peace and inclusion in their home and host communities?
Thank you for that question. And in my opinion, diaspora youth play a very pivotal role in promoting peace and inclusion both in Jamaica and in our host communities. Firstly, we serve as bridges between multiple cultures, offering unique perspectives and helping foster understanding and empathy both in Jamaica and our local environs. Our exposure to diverse experiences allows us to challenge stereotypes and promote positive narratives, which are essential to inclusion and breaking down barriers. Through the exchange of ideas, resources, and best practices, we are able to engage in meaningful dialogues such as this one and generate collaborative initiatives. Diaspora youth have the benefit of experiencing different global systems, programs, and initiatives, being able to see firsthand what works, what doesn't work, and be able to think of the beneficial applications to the Jamaican context. Furthermore, the commitment of diaspora youth to volunteering and advocating for equitable opportunities further strengthens our capacity to influence policy and community building efforts. For example, Reconnect JA, established by a UK diaspora youth member, is one of many emerging nonprofits encouraging diaspora youth to go to Jamaica and create impact through volunteerism. By leveraging our network and sharing identities, we are not only able to enrich our own communities, but serve as catalysts for sustainable development and social cohesion. Ultimately, diaspora youth embody the potential and build resilient communities grounded in peace and inclusion, ensuring that our voices are heard and our actions lead to tangible change.
Thank you so much for that, Asha. And you have really shown us how important the diaspora youth group is towards youth development here in Jamaica. All right, so Dane, it's your turn now. You have been involved in several UN programs that foster social resilience and inclusion. What steps can we take to ensure that our democratic processes are inclusive and consultative, particularly for young people, to ensure that the needs and interests of future generations are safeguarded?
Thank you for that question. Good morning, everyone. Let me acknowledge our Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade, as well as State Minister Orlando Terlong, and also Minister of State in the Ministry of Education and Youth, along with Mr. Dennis Zulu from the UN and our UNICEF representative. And just to greet everyone here this morning, very important question. I must say, I think the minister was in my thought process when she spoke earlier about participatory budgeting. I believe that if we are going to truly accelerate democratic approaches to our development agenda, we have to see how we can democratize our budgeting process. And I believe that our young people, if our policy planners are going to develop programs to impact our lives, we must see how best we can develop mechanisms where we have a direct input into the budgeting process. In previous years, Jamaica was confronted with high levels of debt. And so a lot of what programs were implemented, it came from what I would describe the what left. When we pay our debt, whatever is left, that is what goes to programs. But we are now in a dispensation where we have more money available. And so what we need to see is a more democratization of how we design programs and how young people can get an opportunity to have a direct input into how the budget is funded, as well as how the allocations are made. So we need to see more engagement at the community, at the municipality level to facilitate this. Also, I believe that there needs to be a kind of intergenerational impact assessment that is made as to the impact that present generation is contributing to the sustainability trajectory for us to be able to get our young people to drive the dialogue. Because we're talking about 2030 and the declarations on the future, but we should incorporate our young people to hold those in positions of authority to account for the policies, the decisions that are made. So we need to see more progressive and aggressive steps at monitoring and evaluation. And the declaration spoke directly to how we set up those frameworks. So I believe if we can start with those and to localize some more of the initiatives that we pursue. I speak for the young man and the young girl in St. Elizabeth because that is where I originate. And so I'm always happy and I'm always an advocate for localizing whatever we're doing so we spread impact and not just ticking boxes when we report at some of these international events.
Awesome. Anyone else in here from St. Elizabeth? No? Oh, you have company, Odain. You have company. All right, thank you so much for that. All right, so we're going to go quickly again to Shanique. So Shanique, what are some critical steps that the government can take, bearing in mind the CRC and the UDHR principles in building peaceful, inclusive, and sustainable communities?
Okay. Me again? Me again?
Yes, you again.
So yes, thank you for that question. Again, quite a few, but I'll go through very quickly. I want to start with strengthening our legal framework and policies. And I could speak about that for quite a bit, but I will especially focus on policies and laws which look at child rights and protections, promoting gender equality and addressing gender-based violence, as well as climate change action and adaptation. And even on this, as regards to strengthening, we also have to zero in on the delays that usually happens when it comes to finalizing our laws and policies to address the issues that deeply impact young persons. And two that I want to especially focus on are the Child Care and Protection Act, which has just been sort of wavering in the wind for a while now, as well as our National School Nutrition Policy, which we're hoping we would be able to see finalized for the start of the new school year. Still about, 3 weeks remaining. We can see if miracles will happen, but especially using this moment to say that since Minister Smith is here, we'd love to have a talk with her before she steps up, myself or a member of the JN team. We're also looking at strengthening and facilitating conversations with existing groups, especially those at the grassroots and community level that are already there doing the work. For the most part, they may not be regularized, but they are doing meaningful work, and so we should focus on supporting them in many ways that we can. And we also think that this will directly link back to promoting community engagements and prospects, as well as civil engagement. We also want to invest in inclusive education, which was also have an emphasis and focus on human rights education. Growing up, we always heard that children have responsibilities, but what we know now is that they also have rights. And it's very important that children, young people at all ages, understand that the rights that are afforded to them and what it is that their government and state actors are putting in place to protect them. We also, lastly, for marginalized groups, very specifically, ensuring that we're using evidence-based policies and formulation and to drive our data-driven decision-making processes. It's no longer a case where youth have a seat at the table as being the exception. It should now be the norm and given. And especially when it comes to marginalized groups, they should be at the center of the conversations. Don't come to JAN per se for a conversation about disabled youth, because while we do acknowledge and advocate for all young people, there are disabled persons who you can go to directly to ensure that their direct needs are being met. And so that's essentially, in a nutshell, our thoughts on that.
All right, thank you so much. Yes, thank you. All right, so we have a very tight time left for the discussion. So I still have a few more questions, one each. So I'm just going to ask the remaining panelists if we could just 1 minute for your responses, please, so that we'll allow the audience ample time to pose questions. All right, so quickly I'll go to Jamara again. How can international frameworks like the Declaration on the Future Generations guide the development of youth-centered policies and programs? Quickly, please.
Yeah, thanks for that question. What I would say, international, as we know when it comes to legislation policy in the past, the methodology to establish such, it was kind of done in silos, and you didn't necessarily have the right stakeholders at the table. So I want to applaud in terms of the methodology being taken now. For example, with this particular declaration, actually having youth being involved in creating what this framework looks like. But it's also important to mention that although we have a framework, it really and truly doesn't matter unless the respective nation states actually enact aspects of what the framework identifies. So using that international framework to see what programs could be established within the territories. And with the way in which the world is going these days, not necessarily even looking at it anymore within the confines of our boundaries of a nation, but rather sometimes it has to be taken from a regional approach. So for example, we do understand and know the impact that climate change is having within our international community, and then by extension the Caribbean. How, as a region, are we able to use international frameworks to tackle issues such as that? And then I also want to mention as well, that even as it relates to programs, is very important, the methodology as well, because in that way, they're actually truly responsive. And we're not just sitting in boardrooms, coming up with what we think is necessary for the country, but it's actually responsive in terms of what the youth and by extension the other stakeholders really require.
Yes, all right. Thank you so much, Jamara. And Asha, quickly to you. If you can just tell me 2 ways in which you believe we can better support the integration and contribution of youth diaspora in local and global community building efforts. 2 ways, please.
No problem. Firstly, I would say most importantly, creating platforms and opportunities for engagement. And these could include mentorship programs and networking events, but particularly virtual and hybrid ones for diaspora youth that may not have the resources or availability to travel to Jamaica as regularly. But this also includes fostering a culture of inclusion and collaboration, generating partnerships with local organizations and youth groups to ensure that diaspora youth not only feel connected to their Jamaican identity, but feel welcomed by Jamaican society and are better able to understand the local realities of Jamaica and generate collaborative ideas that are most relevant to the Jamaican context. And secondly, I would say that providing access to resources such as training and funding would enable diaspora youth to initiate and lead projects that both benefit Jamaica and their host communities. And if I may add just one more, recognizing and celebrating the achievements of diaspora youth. This would not only affirm their identities as Jamaicans, but as a result, inspire them to contribute meaningfully to Jamaica's development. And through these efforts, we can harness the potential for diaspora youth as agents of positive change and strengthen Jamaican and global communities alike. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Asha. All right, and Odane, in building national and regional resilience from climate change and natural disasters, if you could just give us 2 key considerations that we should take into account to protect youth interests and their development.
Very important question, and I come to this question with great passion regarding climate change and especially climate financing. And I would say that an important consideration must be how can we mobilize global financing for more localized initiatives? Because what I see presently is that Jamaica has made significant strides to stamp our authority on the subject of climate change and what we're doing. But I believe that there needs to be more localized efforts, and we need to mobilize more international funding to drive projects at the local level. So the consideration must be how can we mobilize money for young people to initiate and to implement projects that they have at the local community. So it is all good and great that we have accreditation to the GCF, the Green Climate Fund, and we are able to access finances to support mega projects. But I would submit that we also need to focus some attention on how can we mobilize resources to fund more smaller scale youth-led projects at the community level. Because a lot of young people are driving innovation, but their projects would not meet the eligibility requirements for mega financing mechanisms like the GCF. So that is an important consideration. Another important consideration has to be looking at how we develop our social protection mechanisms within the country to be climate responsive. I believe that coming out of the impact of Hurricane Beryl, it has shown that we are shock exposed. And so it's about how we can develop our shock-proof nature and build resilience as a country. And if we are going to protect the future and protect our young people, we must strengthen our social protection mechanism where we can provide support and intervention to our young people in the aftermath of various crises. Because how we rebound from a crisis will determine our level of resilience and how we are able to carry our people through a period where we can recover and not being plunged into hunger and poverty. So it's very important that we design our social protection systems to be climate responsive.
Thank you so much for that, Odain. Yes, indeed. All right, so I'll open the floor for some questions. In the interest of time, I'll take one here, and then if there is a question online, we'll take a question from online, and if time allows, then I'll take another. All right? You can go ahead. Please, you can, yeah, and indicate who you're posing the question to, please. Oh, it's an open floor question. Mm-hmm. Just hold a second, because we're not hearing you clearly here. Oh, he's from Lionel Town, and we don't involve them. All right, go again.
All right, so from the beginning, my name is Kevin Pinnock, and my question is an open floor question. So the question basically boils down to, it's the same faces in these typical rooms. So my question generally is, how can we get more people exposed? I know that you have all these programs, and that's all well and good, but what are the numbers behind how many people you're impacting, and does it last beyond the day, the week, the month? Does it go into years? And you mentioned generational impact. So I'm just trying to assess what, based on people here now, what goes on after that.
I can fully concur with that question and to say that it is a fact. Before I came to Kingston, I would not have had access to some of these spaces. And so I believe that at the policy level, there has to be more deliberate attempt at decentralizing some of these initiatives, because oftentimes the narrative is led by Kingstonians, but oftentimes the story is not being reflected as to what the reality is on the ground. And I think a typical scenario or instance of that was with the hurricane that just passed us. A lot of the narrative in Kingston was that, oh my God, we are so blessed, I am okay. But in St. Elizabeth, the suffering was palpable. So I think that we have to be very deliberate, and we heard earlier about an all-of-government approach. And when we speak about government, it also includes the private sector, civil society. And so I think it has to be a deliberate attempt to integrate a decentralized approach where we utilize more of our municipalities to lead some of these projects. We have local economic development committees. We can use those as a means to drive and to leverage some of these conversations, so to ensure there is sustainability in the long run.
All right, thank you so much for attacking. I didn't even have to tell him, you know. He knew he was being picked on. He knew he was being picked on with that question. All right, so I see one question, so we'll just take that last question around the back there. All right, fine. And then we'll squeeze you in as well. All right, so let's have the question. I think that's Neville.
Good. Good day. My name is Siobhan Scott. And when you spoke on crises, I didn't catch your name that well because I'm on the back. But I don't want the one in red to answer. I'd like for the other two to answer this question. But you spoke about crises, right? And I'm saying we keep recovering, but what is the preventative measures being put in place? Like, for example, with Beryl, we could have had less deaths if maybe we had more concrete houses being going in. I know there's still some wooden houses still out there. And as Jamaicans are very stubborn people, we all know that, right? So we tend to not want to adjust or change, some of us. But how can we work to get the Jamaican mindset to change from a stickler in the mud to a sort of adaptive, as you said, to recover?
We'll take one more. We'll just take them together, and then we'll answer all at once.
All right, so good morning, everyone. Mostly to Jayan and the youth practitioners. Usually when it comes to peace and security, that's not a topic that young people love to get involved in. So what specific strategies for the youth organizations have proven effective in engaging young people as active participants in fostering peace and inclusion within their communities, and how you maintain that connection with them, working with them, and they are not often left behind?
Samantha, with your permission, we'll just take the last one over here together.
So three panelists, are you remembering the questions? Okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay, good morning, everyone. This question is for O'Dane Brooks. Yes. So you spoke on resilience, right? So do you think to optimize Jamaicans' independence, do you believe do you believe optimizing Jamaica's independence and its own resources would be an appropriate path to fostering greater resilience? Because I believe it would. And I think one thing that makes us not so resilient is because we aren't as, I believe we are capable, but we do not maximize what we have. Yes, that's it. So do you think that's an appropriate path?
On the question about there was one before that.
Oh, the societal change as required for that.
Yes, I'll have somebody else maybe tackle that, but from my perspective and from Jayan's perspective, strong policies and programs that are put in place for sustain to properly sustain the response to the issues that we're facing. So if we have the policies and if we have the programs, the recovery period will be less. If we have the resources, the recovery period will be less. And if we have the things in place, then our impacts will also be lessened. But as it relates to peace and crime and addressing those sort of issues, I would say, firstly, I don't think this is the answer I want to give, but if I had some time to think about it, we can probably talk afterwards. But I do think it's important to ensure that we are looking at this from two issues. Young persons who are impacted and affected by crime, as well as whether that is directly or as observers, and also young persons who are in a position to help to address the issues. So persons in leadership positions within their schools, within their communities, within different organizations who we can equip with tools and skills to address conflict, to do alternative methods to violence sort of thing, to support their counterparts who may be involved in crime, who may be victims of crime, and also can connect persons to the different resources that are available. I wouldn't say it is that young persons are not interested. I do think that we can acknowledge that they're greatly impacted by it, but often probably feel a sense of purposelessness, for lack of a better word at this time, that they can't do anything about it because it's probably an issue much bigger than we. And so we should also just focus our energies on the small programs and skills that we can implement with young people to help address it within their schools, communities, and those spaces.
All right, I think I'm just going to tackle the question regarding the societal change as required for the adaptive response, or proactive response rather. And all I would say is that this approach, all parties involved have to come to the table. So for example, the government, as Shanique would have mentioned, policies, legislation, resources could be provided, but you also need citizens to also come to the table to actually participate and enact these policies, the programs. I mean, unfortunately, sometimes with hurricanes, and it's not just unique to Jamaica, but as a Caribbean, we believe that, well, I'm from Barbados and God is a Bajan. The same way how God is a Jamaican and God is probably a Trini. And we don't necessarily take these natural disasters seriously until it's too late. So if we were to also change the approach in which we see these issues impacting societies, then that can also lead to some more positive outcomes. And we can also reduce, but really and truly, both parties have to come to the table. I mean, government, there's so much government could do as IDPs, as whomever NGOs within the space. They can offer what they can, and citizens also need to come to the table to see how best we can work together.
All right, thank you so much, Jamaro. All right, so we have... Oh, there was one for you. Oh, sorry.
So I think the question was relating how can we maximize to build resilience. So I think that at the core of the vulnerabilities that we face as a country is largely hinged on the fact that we are what is called an open economy. So we depend heavily on imports. And so at the core of building local resilience, especially to insulate our country from global shocks, the logistics problems, supply chain problems throughout the COVID period demonstrated how the dependence on imports and also on the external global community, how that exposes us to shocks. So we must focus on positioning our public policy, and we are seeing efforts to do so at building local industries where we drive greater productivity so we can get our people to be more productive. We are producing more, and so we are less dependent on external sources through the form of imports. And so at the core of it, we must drive local production, and also on the budgetary side, we must continue to see efforts to build resilient financing infrastructure so we can recover from different global shocks and global phenomena.
All right, thank you so much for that, Odane. Now, we want to ensure that our online participants feel engaged in this process, and so I've received one question from them, if you just allow me to, throw that out to the panelists. So, to the panel. So, the question is, how could we promote civic engagement in youth institutions, given the current lack of interest by some youth who observe lack of development by government?
If I can respond by using an example. So, was it sometime earlier this year when we had the local government election? At JAN, we did a post just outlining what it is that a local councillor does. And when we were reflecting on it afterwards, we realized that it is perhaps a post that did really well and did so organically well. We didn't boost it, we didn't do anything. It was also a post where we got a lot of engagement from young persons saying, "Thank you for sharing this. I did not know what my local councillor does." you know? So I think even something as simple as bridging those gaps between what does a member of parliament does, what does the judiciary, what does the executive, what does the legislature does. I think that's a thing myself included, many young persons don't really understand, and so they can't. They just see things not getting done and probably just like don't even know who's supposed to do it. One. But so I think having a very clear understanding of our structures, or our government operates, how policies are even made. Because while we're frustrated that the school children policy has been stalled, we can understand that it's not something that can also happen overnight. And that's probably something that many persons can understand. I'm not really sure what the status is in terms of how these things are being taught in schools right now, but I think if that's the case, there's one place to start in terms of ensuring that as simple as the basic level all the way up to high school, we have an understanding of these processes, these people, even the discussions around the republic. What does it mean if we have a president versus a prime minister? Ensuring that young people from all ages are getting that information in age-appropriate ways that they can tangibly understand.
I mean, what I would add to that is the renewal of community engagement. I think that community engagement goes a long way, not only for youth, but just as it relates to the society at large. As Shanique would have mentioned, oftentimes persons within communities don't simply understand. I remember the confusion that took place with the local persons understanding the local versus the general election. So I think that we can definitely start there. I do know that Jamaica, in the past, I know that there were some challenges, and the ministry is working as it relates to the revival, but organizations such as the Police Officers Club, seeing how and in what ways we can utilize those community organizations to really educate, not only as it relates to governance, but as it relates to these thematic areas that we're talking about, climate change, citizen safety and security, the economy. As you know, Jamaica is currently going through its Road to Republic process. So I think that community engagement could be a way, and also I do commend some of our maybe ministers, counselors, youth leaders, utilizing the platforms that young people really engage. So for example, X, formerly Twitter, TikTok, those are the avenues that persons, may be able to learn. It's a difficult question because young people are... We're interesting group, So we can really try. I think that for a country such as Jamaica, understanding as a non-Jamaican, understanding the history of the country and what took place in the past, I think community revival, revival of community engagement could be a good place to start.
Thank you so much, Shanique and Jamaro. All right, so I just want to... Oh, Asha, you were responding. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. If I may add to what has already been stated, definitely in regards to community engagement, I think even stronger partnerships, particularly on social media, would be something that would be beneficial to get youth more involved. I'm very much a believer of meeting people where they are. People will not necessarily come and find you in the places that you are. So potentially collaborating with different social media influencers is a big push towards getting youth involved in these discussions, even ones that we traditionally would not think of in such regard, like, say, West Indies Made, if we're talking about diaspora youth, but there are also many other local social media influencers, because you would be surprised the amount of traction and community there is within each personality's network. And while they might not be plugged into certain things, and we might not be able to give them the full breadth of information that is there, at least exposing them to the information in a place that they wouldn't traditionally expect to find it might spark interest and be, what is this? Let me go research a little bit about it. Or they might feel strongly about something and go and look for the information, or it might just spark discussion. And sparking discussion is really the first point to get people interested and involved. Whether they have a strong opinion or not, whether they're engaged in the conversation or just reading through comments, it's important to meet youth where they are. So it's more than just posting on the UN page or our respective youth pages, but actually collaborating with the social media influencers that already have the reach, and therefore through those partnerships actually reach the target youth that are not in the room with us.
Thank you so much for that, Asha. All right, so I just want to take this time out to thank all our panelists. You guys have been very thought-provoking, as we had said before. Even though we did identify barriers in terms of, our mission towards sustainable communities and a peaceful and inclusive Jamaica, etc., we have also put to the fore solutions and also highlighted things that are currently happening that we can either, continue to push or strengthen as well. So I just want to say thank you so much for participating. And, we look forward to more engagements as the event goes on. Thank you so much.
Magic. Okay, so thank you, Samantha, and the panelists for that discussion. Very excellent, very insightful. Help me out, guys. Very excellent, very insightful. No, just give me one word and I'll just piggyback on that. So very excellent, very insightful. No, that's the last one, that's the last one. So very excellent, very insightful, very thought-provoking. No, that has to be the last one, guys. So just give me some suggestion and then we say demure the last one, okay? Very insightful, very thought-provoking, very mindful, very cutesy, very considerate, very inclusive, very classy, very futuristic, very youthful. What about this? I'm not here now for this side. Minister? No, we are including one. All right, so Minister, give me one. Very awesome. And then together, very demure. Okay. All right, so we're going to give away our next prize. So here's how you can win, so listen carefully. So you will be given the opportunity to share your thoughts on the most inspiring thing you've heard so far today. Post it on social media with the hashtag #FutureReadyJamaica. I repeat, post on social media with the most inspiring thing you've heard today with the hashtag #FutureReadyJamaica. So when we see the post, we'll determine the winner and then we'll get back to you later.
All right, so we just want to encourage you that whilst you post, please be creative, be impactful, because who knows? You don't know what the prize is. So, you nice it up for us and we'll ensure that we nice it up for you. All right? Okay. All right, so now we're going to get hands-on. We're at that section of the program where things get practical a bit. So it's your turn to share your thoughts. So this is where you get to take the ideas we have been discussing and turn them into actionable messages that can make a real impact. Now, in this interactive work session, we'll gather your insights on how principles of the Declaration on Future Generations can be applied to the Jamaican context.
Okay, so listen very keenly to the instructions. You'll be split into small groups, and each group will focus on specific action point for the Declaration on Future Generations. Your first task is to briefly review and discuss your group's action point. Make sure everyone in your group fully understands the key elements and objectives.
All right. So once you're all on the same page, you're going to work together to develop 2 concise messages, right? Now, each should be 45 seconds long or less. That explains how the global action can be localized right here in Jamaica. As you craft these messages, think about the unique cultural, economic, and social factors that affect Jamaican youth.
And don't forget to specify your target audience for each message, whether it's directed at the youth, civil society, the government, the private sector, and make sure your messages are tailored to resonate with and engage with these specific groups. I repeat, make sure that your presentation is specific to target audiences, whether it's the civil society, the government, and private entities, and make sure that it resonates deeply with these specific groups.
All right, so after you have finished developing your messages, each group will select 2 spokespersons who will present their approaches. Now, these spokespersons will then head over to our on-site media room. Where's the on-site? Okay, it's outside? Oh, outside, nice botanical background and everything. So these spokespersons will head outside to the on-site media room to record their talking points. Sounds exciting. You think we should go out there and record our talking points? We have lots to say, don't it? Yeah, man. All right. So everyone, here's a quick rundown of the themes for each group. So
group 1, your focus is on how we can make decisions and policies that learn from the past and plan effectively for the future. How do we ensure that the choices we make today can be informed by solid evidence and foresight? And this group will be led by Shelley Trim.
Shelley, all right. So we see Shelley's at that table there. So if you wish to... Right, so that's where Shelley will be working from with Group 1. All right, so Group 2 will be led by Mrs. Kamisha Swaby. All right, and that group will focus on strategies that ensure that everyone has access to education that prepares them for the future, leaving no one behind. The question is, what does future-ready education look like? And how do we make it inclusive for all?
Group 3, your focus will explore how development can be driven by people and measured by metrics that consider the environment. How do we balance human progress with environmental sustainability? And that group will be led by Shanique Bowden in the pink.
Awesome. All right. And Group 4 will be led by Sabrina Barnes. This group will focus on building a strong, resilient future that is responsive to shocks, centered on human security, and safeguards the most vulnerable, including children, youth, and families. The question is, what does it take to create a future where everyone is protected and secure?
Group 5, your task is to explore how we can ensure that our democratic processes are inclusive and consultative, safeguarding the needs and interests of future generations. How do we make sure that everyone's voices are heard in the democratic process? That's the question. How do we make sure that everyone's voice is heard during the democratic process? And that group will be led by Javian Nelson.
Where's Javian? Okay, so that's Javian, ladies and gentlemen. All right. And Group 6, Jamaro Marvel will lead that one. Where are you, Jamaro? Even though them know you look like, all right, sitting at a table already. So Group 6 will focus on a horizontal approach to sustainable development that includes all voices and safeguards the needs and interests of everyone in society. How do we ensure that sustainable development is truly inclusive?
Okay, so and last group, Group 7, your theme is about fully engaged and financed youth participation in system of multilateralism. How do we ensure that young people are not just participants, but leaders in global decision-making processes? That group will be led by Odain Brooks and Paula Istoriz. Let me get that right. Okay, so remember, This is your chance to make your voices heard and shape how these global actions are applied in our local context within Jamaica. So get creative, think big, don't think small-minded, think big, and most importantly, have fun with it and be creative. Be youthful.
And don't follow the stylings by Rihanna. She did style me too, Minister is not here alone. I get styled too, but all right. So let's get to work. Whilst you work, we'll be circulating written guidance to each group to answer any questions and to hear the amazing ideas that you're coming up with. All right, so let's get started. Let's go. Oh, so in terms of the time, if 10 minutes, 15 minutes, all right? So you have 15 minutes to engage in your various discussions. And I know that we have had also some very engaging discussions. I saw them, and I saw Minister moving around. All right, so just giving the person some time to be seated again. So now it's time for us to share the powerful messages that we have crafted in our various groups. I just love the way how I'm saying we and or, and you know, it's just beautiful. All right, but this time, I know we had done some recordings. Some persons did their recordings outside at the media spot. But in the interest of time, what we will do is to call the various groups, and they will just, I think it's one spokesperson. One spokesperson will come up, and they will just share the message. You have less than a minute to do so, please. So make it nice and spicy. I know you're all good for it. So we will be calling the groups up shortly. We're just giving the persons at the buffet a minute, please. So you might be wondering what will happen with the recordings. Since we won't be seeing them today, what will happen with them? So the plan is that they will be shared across all social media platforms related to the UN. And I believe you will also receive them, Jermaine? Yes, right. So you will also be privy to the recordings as well. All right? Are we ready? And we will continue recordings after the presentations. After the event. Okay, so when we have ended, we will continue the recordings as well. Okay, so if you didn't get to do it, don't be brokenhearted. There's still an opportunity for you to do your recording again. All right? So, without further ado,
okay, so we'll begin with the first group one. The spokesperson for that group will come up, and then, as she said before, it's just 1 minute, so we'll time you guys, or less, 1 minute or less. And as we listen to these call to action, let's remember that they're not just words, but they're commitments, and it will take a collective action from each and every one of us in this room to make those commitments a reality and put them into action. So the representative from group one, please make it to the stage. That is Jamaica practices evidence-based decisions and policy making.
all right, so that's group one. Watch him button up him jacket, you know him coming to sell off, watch him. All right, please make him welcome. Do we have a microphone for him, or we?
Okay, so as was mentioned before, our theme was Jamaica practice evidence-based decision and policy making. Right? To be future ready, the government should broaden its perspective by actively including persons with special needs and also persons from low-income backgrounds, engaging with these individuals, incorporating their experiences in the government can also give valuable insights into specific challenges they face. These policies are not only evidence-based but also addresses the real needs of all committee members, leading to more effective and equitable changes and outcome. To be future ready, this is what we want, and that was what we came up with. Thank you.
That was so good. Thank you so much. What's your name, please? Shakir. Cardane? Okay, thank you so much, Cardane. Yes, please give him a round of applause. All right, so before we call up group two, let me remind you of the hashtag. So if you want to react or respond to any of the messages that you have heard so far, please remember to use the hashtag for today. Future Ready, JA, right? on all your social media platforms. I'd also like to remind you to check with our UNICEF representatives in relation to the new poll that they launched today towards, the kind of future that we want. All right, so they're located at the table. Just raise your hand so that they may see. Right, awesome. All right, so calling Group 2, Jamaica's education system is inclusive and future ready. Let's welcome them.
Good day, everyone. My name is Siobhan Scott. Is no one hearing me? All right, thank you. My name is Siobhan Scott. Thank you. Thank you. This is the message from Group 2. To be future ready, the the Government of Jamaica, must prioritize equitable funding for all schools with the consideration of individualized learning solutions to meet the diverse, holistic social development needs of students. To be future ready, educators in Jamaica must leverage technology to become agents of innovation and transformation as they pass on knowledge that targets each child meaningfully. This is the future we want. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Siobhan Scott. We heard it loud and clearly. So now we move on to Group 3. Jamaica's development is people-driven with a human security approach. Group 3.
All right, so our two messages, one of them is directed to young people specifically, and just to be a bit more specific, organized groups particularly. And the other is directed to policymakers. So going firstly with policymakers, to be future ready, we need robust, comprehensive, and inclusive policies that defend our human rights and recognize development as more than just numbers. People-driven development is about advancing and improving life for everyone. Let's push for policies that prioritize well-being, sustainability, and equality, ensuring that true progress uplifts every person and protects our future. This is the future we all want. Secondly, to young people, to be future ready, we the youth need to be actively engaged in decision-making processes. Ensure that the youth perspective in all its diversity is represented. Jamaica's development must be people-driven, but more specifically, it must be youth-driven. This is the future we want.
All right, thank you so much. So calling on both policymakers and youth towards being future ready. Very good. All right, so we call upon Group 4. Jamaica is a resilient, shock-responsive country. Let's welcome them. Oh, sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone. We just eat, man. Come on. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, my name is Sabrina Barnes, and as mentioned, Jamaica is a resilient and shock-responsive country, so this is the recommendations from the young people. To be future-ready, we need intentional public education and infrastructural development to be a frequent conversation. What do you see the place as shit this morning, not true? Right. So to create a more preventative and proactive measure before disasters, we need to be a conversation throughout the year. We know that we are vulnerable, and the young people are saying to be future ready, this conversation needs to be long lasting, and this is the future we want. Additionally, to aid in making resources available to the elderly, women, children, LGBTQ, and other marginalized societies, to identify that these areas are more vulnerable and ramp up resources equitable to prevent disasters from affecting them most. Jamaica might be shaken, but we don't have to stay shaken. So this is the future that we want.
Jamaica might be shaken, but we don't need to stay shaken. Thank you, Madam Sabrina Barnes. So we'll move on to Group 5, which is Jamaica is an inclusive, consultative democracy. Group 5.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Dashawn Carter, and this is what we had. So to be future ready, nation leaders must ensure that local government facilities who are responsible for change are accessible by every facet of youth in the country, and all communication strategies are flexible to ensure they can reach and be reached by all persons, regardless of age, background, or educational status. This is the future we want. To be future ready, policymakers must engage youth from all walks of life in every stage of the policy process. A conservative effort must be made in streamlining said processes, whether it's commenting or consultation. By doing so, policies will be more reflective of the diverse perspectives and the needs for our demographic, ultimately leading to more effective and sustainable outcomes. This is the future we want, and this is the future we deserve.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Carter. So he said that local government facilities should be accessible and communication should be flexible and policy should be diverse to present the perspectives of the youth. So thank you so much, Mr. Carter. All right, so we now welcome Group 6. Jamaica embraces progressive partnerships for the achievement of the SDGs.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Laurel Williams, and I serve as the National President for the National Secondary Students' Council. To be future ready and ensure that sustainable development is genuinely youth inclusive, the government of Jamaica must forge strong partnerships with academia. This collaboration is not just an option, but a necessity in preparing the next generation for the world that we will inherit. We must be engaged, not merely as participants, but as key architects in the shaping of our future. Our voices must resonate in discussions and be transformed into actions that reflect our perspectives. This means embedding education on the sustainable development goals, fostering deep civic engagement, and expanding our understanding of global issues. Only then will we be equipped to carry forward the vision of a sustainable and equitable future. This is not just about the future that we envision. This is the future that we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. All right, so Group 7, Jamaican youth are meaningfully engaged in multilateralism. Group number 7, representative.
Am I being heard? Am I being heard? So, as mentioned, Jamaican youth are meaningfully engaged in multilateralism. To be future ready, international organizations need to collaborate with local youth councils and youth-led organizations in order to spread civic awareness about the role of multilateralism and engage active youth participation. To be future ready and to achieve SDG 4, the Ministry of Education and Youth, along with the regional offices, must engage strategically with schools to improve accountability, to implement social protection mechanisms, including food programs, transportation support across Jamaica, with a special focus on rural areas. This is the future we want.
Thank you, Malik. Can we all agree that those were an amazing set of call to actions? Give them a round of applause, all 7 representatives. So each of those messages reflect the creativity, innovation, persistence, and passion of Jamaica's youth.
So we have heard your voices, and now it's time to make sure that these messages resonate far beyond this room. Let's take these calls to actions and turn them into real change for our communities, our country, and our future. Now, I just want to remind you that they're not just messages, they're what? Say it louder than that, man. Thank you very much. All right, so before we wrap up today and we invite Minister Terlong to speak, we have another giveaway, right? So, this one is really special because it's about your vision for Jamaica's future. Kevon, you want to tell him more?
Okay, so basically, the first person to raise their hand and give one sentence about their vision for Jamaica.
Wow, I thought we would have had hands up fighting each other.
Don't delay your responses like Tosh, guys.
All right, so I see 3 hands up. Can you come forward, please? You can just stand right there. Oh, you know what? Come up on the podium. We don't want to be lonely up here. I saw a hand over. Oh, the person. Okay.
Mr. Scott.
Is that Mr. Scott? Can't forget you know. All right. So we're going to give you each 30 seconds. Can you do it in 30 seconds? Yeah. All right, Sabrina. Didn't forget you either. All right. So I didn't ask. Do we use this mic or? Okay.
Good afternoon again, everyone. So my vision for Jamaica is that our policymakers can realize that youth inclusion is not just a conversation, but is an actual solution, and that we'll be able to take young people seriously for active change towards national development.
Round of applause, guys. So, Javoy.
Good afternoon, everyone. My vision is that all of us, especially citizens, understand in order for Jamaica to grow, we all must put our hands together, put our minds together, our hearts together to make Jamaica the greatest nation in the Caribbean and maybe the world.
Hello again. My vision for Jamaica is to make Jamaica all-inclusive and, as much as possible, future-ready.
Amen.
All right, so they're all winners. Ladies, you see how easy that was? Yeah, man, they're all winners. So we just want to congratulate them and thank them for sharing. So some of what we heard was that they don't just want us to be beneficiaries, but also participants towards our future. And they want us to be inclusive and also the best nation in the Caribbean. So clap them again. Yeah, man. Oh, all inclusive. My bad. All inclusive. All right. So as we bring today's dialogue to a close, we'd like to invite Minister of State, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Alanda Terlong, to share his closing thoughts. Minister Terlong, the floor is yours.
For a second there, I was beginning to wonder if I myself am future ready because I couldn't get it up. Alas, I am. To our very demure masters of ceremony who were so mindful of the time constraints and the importance of having our youth seated together to discuss not just the present but the future of youth and sustainable development. Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, the Honorable Marsha Smith, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education and Youth, Mr. Dennis Zulu, our United Nations Resident Coordinator, His Excellency Brian Wallace, the Permanent Representative of Jamaica to the United Nations, who joined us online, other members from UNICEF and other development partners and international agencies, youth leaders joining us here in the room and, of course, online, our Global Jamaica Youth Representative, Asha, who joined us, distinguished ladies and gentlemen all. Good afternoon. It is certainly an honor to address you today and to extend my heartfelt commendations for your active participation in this dialogue. The rich and engaging discussions we've had as we prepare for the Summit of the Future have truly been inspiring. Jamaica's contribution to finalizing the Declaration on Future Generations will undoubtedly be strengthened by the productive exchanges that we've shared today. Your insights on the various facets of this crucial pact for the future are deeply valued and appreciated. As a minister and member of parliament, my schedule is often filled with numerous engagements. Despite this, I have made it a priority to follow the initial proceedings before my arrival online, and I am genuinely impressed by the depth of discussion and level of engagement. Your contributions are making a significant impact, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this important dialogue. I certainly wish to thank our co-host, Mr. Dennis Zulu, United Nations Resident Coordinator, and his team for their strong collaborative efforts in staging today's event. Let me also acknowledge Ms. Olga Isesa, our UNICEF Jamaica representative, and Rayanne Robinson from UNICEF Youth Council, her membership there, for their insightful presentation on the findings of the U report as well. I also had the pleasure of joining Olga and other members from her team, I believe it was last week, as we discussed violence against children and the work being done here in Jamaica to stem violence against children, and also the work being done by UNICEF at the international level. I must also commend all our young kings and queens, you, our youth, from your various groups across Jamaica and across the diaspora for your invaluable contributions today. Your efforts have not only made this dialogue a success, but have also ensured that your voices will be carried through to the collaborative multilateral discussions aimed at ensuring a meaningful summit that benefits all. I must pause here also to note that at some point, I wish that all Jamaican youth would be further enlightened as to the place you occupy in Jamaica's governance structure. So as was stated earlier, we do not believe in just a blanket statement, oh, that youth should be at the table, or we understand and appreciate that Jamaican youth are in fact seated at the table as key partners and stakeholders in Jamaica's growth and development. Your enlightening should also indicate that Jamaica is one of the few countries that hosts an annual youth parliament. Jamaica is one of the few countries in the world that also has a youth advisory council that sits and meets with the Prime Minister. So your thoughts, your actions, your perspective of the present and the future plays across every single budgetary item, policy decision, and developmental program that happens in Jamaica, because in all things, you have a very youthful Prime Minister who just turned 51, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, who understands and appreciates the significance of youth as a part of the solution for the sustainable growth and development of Jamaica. So I applaud you all for being effective youth leaders and stakeholders in the governance structure of Jamaica. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the concept of staging this national youth dialogue on the Summit of the Future mirrors the understanding that the involvement of youth is integral to the development of policies at both the national and international levels. The government of Jamaica is therefore committed and maintains our commitment to representing your to represent your interest and inputs in the outcomes of the Summit of the Future. We have always maintained that it is vital for you, our young kings and queens, to have a seat at the table and to be a part of the solutions of Jamaica's growth and development, and to present the opportunity for each of you to actively participate in national and global decision-making process through initiatives such as this youth-led dialogue today. Throughout the panel discussions and interactive work sessions, we observed impressive and productive engagement, with participants offering insightful perspectives on critical issues affecting our youth. These included challenges such as unemployment and underemployment. Despite government projections of low unemployment, we noted your concerns regarding youth apathy towards government initiatives and civic engagement, concerns about inclusivity, particularly amongst marginalized groups, and the impact of poverty, crime, and violence on young people. A key question that has emerged was how we can effectively involve youth in the budget presentation process, especially considering the intergenerational impact on sustainable development. Additionally, how can we encourage more youth to engage in direct dialogue and contribute to shaping development programs? These are important questions, and I want to assure you that, again, each year the government provides answers and solutions to these questions. The government of Jamaica is deeply committed to empowering our youth through a variety of impactful initiatives designed to enhance their skills and open doors to future opportunities. A key component of this effort is the Heart NSTA Trust, which has transformed from its early focus on hospitality training into a leading institution offering diverse programs for youth designed to assist them into leading a better future. These programs include robotics, artificial intelligence, software engineering, and much more. To make these opportunities more accessible, the government has waived tuition fees up to level 4, which is equivalent to an associate degree, and has also introduced financial support measures, including grants for transportation, lunch, and essential tools for graduates under the Heart Care program. Additionally, we are proud of the LIFT program, which prepares students transitioning from sixth form to the workforce by equipping them with the necessary skills and mindset for success. This program, alongside the removal of guarantor benefits for tertiary financing from the Students' Loan Bureau and an impressive allocation of $653 million for tertiary scholarship, demonstrates our unwavering commitment to supporting our youth. As a government, we have also been able to fund these initiatives due to the remarkable strides in economic development, with all key indicators, including the debt-to-GDP ratio and unemployment, showing positive trends. As of March 31st, 2024, Jamaica's net international reserves surpassed the US $5 billion mark, a significant milestone in our nation's economic journey. These achievements are crucial for funding programs that benefit our people, especially you, the youth of Jamaica. We are now more prepared than ever in our nation's history to face environmental challenges. Even in the wake of Hurricane Beryl, our climate change initiatives have been significantly strengthened, including the establishment of United States' $150 million Disaster Mitigation Insurance Fund. We continue to collaborate closely with international partners, as demonstrated by Jamaica's inclusion in the high-level 18-member High-Level Ocean Panel and joint efforts with Japan and other global partners to enhance our capacity for detecting weather changes and tracking hurricanes. Unfortunately, Hurricane Beryl resulted in the death of, I believe, 2 Jamaicans, and this we offer again our sincere condolences to their families and friends and loved ones generally, even as we continue with initiatives to restore those areas, in particular St. Elizabeth, Clarendon, and Manchester, that were mostly ravaged by Hurricane Beryl. In addition to these efforts, the government has also expanded its social programs to support those most affected by poverty. For example, the New Hope Social Welfare Program has seen billions spent and allocated for hurricane relief. The Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, has also recently announced more initiatives to assist with repairs and provide aid to homeowners and businesses impacted by Hurricane Beryl. As can be seen, youth programs are embedded across a range of policies and budgets, including education, housing, peace and security, climate change, and pension fund reforms. These initiatives also cover sectors like tourism, which also employs many young people. By integrating these programs, we aim to provide youth with opportunities to build wealth and secure their futures, ultimately benefiting them in the years to come. What I want to leave with you is the importance of youth also getting enumerated and holding your governments to account. By voting is how you truly let your voices be heard. One commentator mentioned the apathy that exists in Jamaica, but apathy does not move a nation forward. It is getting involved. It is taking a stand and letting your voices be heard. That is how you truly effect social change. That is how you effect political change. That is how you enable the continuance of a government that has youth at the center of all its political development and social programs, by getting involved. And to do that, I encourage you all to get enumerated so you can vote for the continuance of a government that cares about youth. And so to indicate also, the government continues to broaden its commitment to youth engagement, and these include our diaspora youth. Since 2020, in collaboration with the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council, the government has further strengthened and transformed the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council by enabling the integration of young Jamaicans across the globe, and to integrate more second, third, and fourth generation Jamaicans to harness their potential to drive sustainable growth and development in Jamaica and in their adoptive hopes. I therefore wish to extend thanks to Ms. Asha Richards, the chair of the Global Jamaica Diaspora Youth Council, who joined us virtually and highlighted the impactful work and initiatives that the Youth Council has undertaken since its redesign. I'm also pleased to emphasize at this point that the 10th staging of the Jamaica Diaspora Conference in June saw several young persons visiting Jamaica from more than 17 countries and letting their voices be heard as it relates to youth empowerment. Again, a government that prides itself in giving Jamaican youth a voice and a seat at the table. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador Wallace's presentation laid a strong foundation for our participants to effectively engage with the theme of the Summit of the Future and the Declaration on Future Generations, which will be adopted at the summit. I want to thank Ambassador Wallace for his frank and comprehensive responses provided to the questions raised during the Riverside chat. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I wish to affirm the Government of Jamaica's commitment to you, the youth of Jamaica, to your empowerment, to ensuring that you are well positioned to contribute to societal development and to help and shape a sustainable future for all Jamaicans. We are genuinely proud of you and the work that you have accomplished today, and remain dedicated to ongoing engagement with Jamaica's youth as we integrate your ideas into our national planning process. The interactive discussions and calls to action from today has certainly assured me and all Jamaicans that Jamaica's youth fully understand the importance of being future ready. As noted by Minister Johnson Smith in her call to action, strong youth engagement is essential if we are truly to attain the future that we want. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister of State, Orlando Terlong. And before we wrap up, we want to thank each and every one of you here today for your participation. The conversation we had today are just the beginning, and we look forward to continuing to build the future for Jamaica and the rest of the world.
And before I say my last few words, I am told that there's a birthday today. So we just want to say happy birthday to O'Dane Brooks. He is the CARICOM representative. We also had him on the panel. Is there any other birthday today? No? All right. O'Dane, if we weren't running out of time, I would have sang to you, but after this, okay? All right. Okay, so remember, the future isn't just something that happens. It's something we create. Thanks to everyone for coming out. We want to thank those who participated. We want to thank members of our head table for staying with us from start to end. We don't take that for granted. We know that you all have been, clap them, yes man, from start to end. We don't take that for granted. We know that you have busy schedules, but we're important, and that is why you're here today. So we want to say thank you. We want to say thank you to all the youth groups that came out, all the youth representatives, all the partners. Minister used that term, and seasoned partners and advocates, right? So even though Renee Styleway, we're still youth, right? Because we're seasoned advocates and partners towards youth development. So big up on yourself, and thank you all so much for coming out. Minister wants to say something? Sure.
Thank you again. I wanted to make a point without going on too long and without repeating any of the clear and solid points that have been made earlier, but to connect the dots. What has followed through all of the tables, one of the 2 points that I found most often repeated was the concept that young people don't just want to be conceptually at the table. So having an event like this is not enough, and we get that. And it actually follows through a lot of our formalistic discussions, but I wanted to give you the assurance that we're not just saying this. The UN has committed to creating a document that will capture all of the calls to action that have been made today for an official presentation to the government of Jamaica, so that the ministry will have this as the clear youth views, youth priority views that we take into our discussions on the Summit of the Future. So it's your views won't just go into the Ethernet or into social media in mindful and demure posts, but but they will. So Rihanna. Okay. But they will actually follow through. So I want to encourage you to follow what's happening with the summit, follow what's happening with the pact. I, for one, want to know whether the silence procedure gets broken before 4 today. As soon as I find out, I'll try and do a post. But it's, even if it gets broken, and even if it is that, as we encourage you to be optimistic, and Ambassador still has us having to process the fact that sometimes we really do have to work across 193 countries with a target of being least collectively unhappy, right? The least collectively unhappy. It doesn't mean that your ideas won't be captured, and if not captured in the document itself, that they will not have been recognized by the UN system here, by the government of Jamaica, in order to look at implementation as well, which is the next and possibly most important phase. So you'll have broad language in order to find compromise, but we are informed by your priorities. So I wanted to thank you again for your very clear and knowledgeable participation in today. I've been thoroughly impressed by all that I have heard, and it fills me with renewed hope, and every assurance that we are, in fact, future ready with you.
Minister, don't leave the stage as yet. We're inviting the members of the head table to come up to the stage for a photo op. Right. Or we can go outside and take it. Okay, guys, Minister is requesting that we take a collective group picture. So once you're finished here, we'll go outside and take that big group picture.